Metaversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and I'm here on location at Chepstow Castle, and it has been a dream come true to be able to see this in person, explore it, and we have a full video where I'm going through the entire thing. It's going to be a long one because I'm geeking out constantly, but in this video I want to do a more focused, dedicated video on a really interesting element that is on Chepstow Castle that is one of my favourite things on castles. Now, if you've watched my content very much about castles and everything, you know I kind of like machicolations, and you might think that Chepstow Castle does not have machicolations, but if you think that, you would actually be wrong. In actual fact, you are looking at a very special type of machicolation. In fact, they're one of the earliest types of machicolations, and where is it? It is right there. You're looking at it. That thing right there is called a slot machicolation. And it's one of the earlier types of stone machicolations that we have on stone castles. Now, if you don't know what machicolations are, they're a design feature that enables defenders of a castle to be able to drop stones or even shoot, crossbows or bows, directly down at people who are attacking the very base of the castle. You see, one of the problems with crenellations that you see up the top here, right, is if you were to try and shoot down at people right at the line of the castle below, you'd have to expose yourself by leaning out. Machicolations and hoardings before machicolations gave a platform for you to step out from the line of the wall beneath and shoot directly down. Now, hoardings is the timber type of machicolations, and we see types of hoardings being depicted on the Bayeux tapestry, which indicates that this philosophy was understood in Europe, and Britain, quite early on. It is false to think that machicolations were learnt from the designs of castles in the Crusades. Lawrence of Arabia has a book where he goes through just looking at Crusader castles, and one of the myths he is trying to debunk in that book is the idea that many complex kind of design elements of medieval castles were adopted from the Middle East through the Crusades, when he actually found that no, a lot of these complex design elements on Crusader castles were actually brought over from Europe, and they existed on European castles before them, and machicolation is exactly one of those things. Now, machicolation translates to head crusher, essentially. Now, when it comes to slot machicolations like that, instead of having small kind of machicolations that are in between corbels on a defensive wall, it's one long kind of machicolation, a line, and it's situated directly above the gatehouse. So machicolations, when they appear on castles, more often appear on the parts where you need to defend them most. And so above gatehouses is exactly that. And we see more classic style machicolations. First of all, machicolations are usually more common on French style castles, but they do exist on British castles. And when you see them on British castles, they're more stereotypically on gatehouses. And with Chepstow Castle here, we have that, but we have the machicolation right above the gatehouse, but it's a slot machicolation. This type of slot machicolation is a bit more common on certain castles. I'm standing here at Caerphilly Castle, and what you see behind me right here is exactly that, another slot machicolation. I'm at one of the outermost gatehouses, which identifies this one specifically as the Barbican, or a Barbican, because Caerphilly has more than one, because there is two main directions of approaching the castle. And what's really special about this gatehouse Barbican is it actually technically has multiple types of, slots where you can drop down things to any person trying to attack the castle. And the thing that determines the difference between it being a slot machicolation and a slot murder hole is specifically where it's located. So I'm actually standing in front of the primary gatehouse of Caerphilly, and we can see that slot machicolation right here. Now, the reason why this is called a machicolation specifically is because it's overhanging the primary entrance. And if any enemy gets too close to the front gate to attack, well, they're able to drop rocks or shoot arrows down from this slot right here. But what's really interesting, as you can see as we come in, there are additional archways, and between those archways there are also slots to be able to drop down projectiles, rocks on enemy heads. Now, the difference here is that because they're not on the outermost wall, these would be considered slot murder holes and not an actual machicolation. Standing under the slot machicolation here, and then get a close-up look of the slot murder holes right here. So this is a hugely fortified gatehouse because most likely there'd be a slot for another portcullis as we travel out here. Now, one of the earliest examples of a slot machicolation is actually on a fortified structure, which dates to before the Crusades. So we're looking at the 11th century here. Here is an artistic rendition of what this structure might have looked like in the 11th century. And when looking at it, you might be thinking, okay, where are the machicolations? Well, the answer is they're much bigger than what the later machicolations ended up looking like. See those arches? That's exactly where they are. And if you're thinking that machicolations are supposed to be supported by corbels to extend the battlement further out from the wall beneath, not necessarily. There's actually cases of machicolations where instead of the battlement being extended out, the wall underneath began to recess in behind the battlement above. We can see this on the machicolations of Chateau Goyard. And that these particular machicolations are much bigger than the conventional size. The purpose of a machicolation is to have the battlement overhang the wall beneath. That's either by extending the battlement or having the wall beneath recess underneath it, but that it enables the defenders to shoot down to anyone who is adjacent to the lower wall. And that's exactly what we see being achieved here. The battlement above is extended further out from the line of the wall beneath. It's just that this extended portion isn't supported by large corbels. Instead, the sides of the archways run all the way down to ground level. And if you wanted even more proof that machicolations were around before Crusades, that they didn't pick them up from, the Middle East and Crusader castles, was the presence of hoardings. Hoardings is basically wooden machicolations which gave the same function and purpose and utility, and we even see signs of them, as I mentioned, on the Bayeux tapestry. Seeing a slot machicolation on a castle in real life has been quite a highlight for me because they're very, very cool. And you don't see them very often. A lot of people, when they see that thing there, they wouldn't really know what it is. Some people have even called it a murder hole, but murder holes are actually different. And they think some of the holes at the gatehouse on Chepstow are murder holes, when actually no, those are where the counterweights for the portcullis went. And the thing above it is a slot machicolation. Not very common, but awesome to see, right, in person on a real castle, and Chepstow Castle has exactly one of those things. So there we go. That's what it is. That is a slot machicolation, and I got to see it in person, and you got to learn about what it is, bit of background. Hope you enjoyed. And if you want to see the full kind of tour where I get to geek out about that, but also a dedicated video talking about the mystery of the Great Tower here at Chepstow. It's odd. And it also led to an odd layout of this castle, which some have kind of criticised it being not a very well-designed castle as a result. If you want to know why, well, there's that dedicated video as well. The mystery of Chepstow Castle, as well as the full tour. You can check it out right now, or if they're not out, they'll be coming out soon. I hope to see you there, and until that time, farewell.